Freedom to Transact by Ash Lightstone. The freedom to transact is the freedom to be. It means I don't need your permission to do as I please and just be me. It's a freedom that we should all have. Without any conditions we have no say in. There shouldn't be any strings attached or any rhetoric about it being a sin. It's a freedom that allows us all to be equal in a manner that is profoundly meaningful. And for that reason they tell us it's dangerous. They say there's no way for it to be purposeful. When others don't want us to have this freedom, we have to stop and ask why. We have to ultimately see that it's about control and that their so-called protection is a lie. This is the ultimate freedom, the most significant one. All others are built on top of this, and without this, no other freedoms can be won.
Well, there you go. I'm just going to do a little short intro there on that song because I can already feel my computer collapsing under the pressure of OBS and playing from the chain. But yeah, that's one of the first songs that we made, that we inscribed using recursion last year. One of the simple test cases for what we've really set out to do now, and it's really been progressing. But this week, I know everyone's been used to me sort of waffling on my own and going through various different applications that I'm working on and playing different songs and occasionally getting a little bit lost in the SPD. But this week I've actually got a guest, Astral Arkitekt, who you can see there on Twitter, and you should go and follow if you're interested in this generative side of things. It's something that I've been really just bordering on in terms of my understanding of these things. Of course, we're talking about some of the new stuff that's going on right now, DMT, digital matter theory, DDT, digital dimensions theory, and NAT, natural applications theory. These are three things that are really having a big impact on generative art, particularly on ordinals, on Bitcoin. It's really having a bit of a heyday, and Astral Arkitekt is a bit of an expert in all of this stuff, and actually I've been learning slowly from him over the last few weeks, reading some of this amazing material that he's been writing on the subject of digital dimensions theory. Of course, the first time I heard the word DMT, I instantly thought what is it, dimethyltryptamine. I've just always known that as a drug. I hadn't known about digital matter theory, and then looking up about it, finding out about the history of it. It's obviously something that we've been aware of for quite a while. Some of the early concepts around the 90s and the early 2000s. I remember doing one of the first with Orbital. No, it was Long Range. It was Phil Hartnell's band from Orbital. A band called Long Range, and we did the first gig in a place called Second Life, which back then, this is 20 something years ago, it had just become a thing. And the idea of one of the guys who was on the shoot, who was in the studio with us, who was with the camera crew for Second Life, and he was telling me how he was making a living from selling clothing. He was designing clothing in Second Life and selling it, and this is pre-blockchain. Don't forget, this is this is a good, probably at least maybe a decade before the onset of blockchain. And so that idea of security, it was still very centralized. You had to offer this kind of fun gameplay, bordering on kind of what we can do now. You had to have a very centralized community, big servers. It was going to cost a lot of money. This is what blockchain suddenly does now, is it takes all that heavy lifting out of the equation. So now you don't need all those servers, you just need a good idea, and you can implement all of these provably random or apparently random values I guess what I'm going to get Astral Arkitekt to actually describe this stuff in greater detail when I get into it. But in my understanding of these things is digital matter theory is basically just goes back to object-oriented programming back in the 90s when they said, okay, let's create little pieces of program, but they actually represent an object that does something. So this is a box, you can open it and there can be something inside it. This is a car, you know, it will drive. All these ideas about creating software that behaved like something in the real world. And then eventually that gives over to digital dimensions theory, which is kind of saying, well, look, you can take this same data, but depending on how you look at it, how you approach it, how you process it, how you let it affect whatever it is affecting, is also something that is very flexible and fluid. And that's where I think digital dimensions theory kind of comes in. Again, this is where Astral Arkitekt can really hopefully kind of open our eyes to kind of what this really means, not just in terms of the fun, but the utility. That's really been my driving force for the last decade working in crypto, is looking for utility that can help musicians. You know, as a struggling musician myself, someone who felt that the system of royalties and payments and trust and everything was just completely broken. It massively let me down. And so I've been on this quest to find the answers so that we can make it, we can make music, you know, fair again, and make it a really thriving, creative space rather than a battle for scraps. And so that's been my journey for a long time. And so this idea of taking another step further down this road to find what we can do with this, because it really is special. When you get to natural applications theory, maybe that almost makes a bit more sense, because there are lots of different collections that have come out. You might have heard of nat cats, but there's even simpler things to understand, like I think there was nat flowers or nat trees. And the idea being that you can create a seed and then you can have a number of different possible outcomes for this seed, just as you have in life, just how evolution works. The seed, you know, can be affected by different things. Its DNA can react. When it is combined with other DNA. Again, you don't know that the outcome isn't 100% predictable, as we've seen in these games in the past, where you're taking two different characters and you're merging their traits together. It's usually a fairly simple algorithm as to how those traits combine and what they produce. Whereas when you add random elements into it, which is where it gets really fun, you don't know where it's going to go. But of course, those random elements have always been provided by a server, by a central party. And this is where the blockchain has really created something new, where you can trust the fact that you can actually literally take some random elements that are guaranteed to keep occurring over and over again, and you can have them make these decisions. So no decision is known. The outcome is not known until a block is mined. And that's just got some really interesting real world applications. It's not just fun. It really does genuinely create something new. But right now I am going to jump back into the Discord and see if I can get Astral in here. Let's fade this across. Are you there, man? Can you hear me? Oh, I gotta unmute myself, have I? There we go. You there, man? How are you doing?
Hello.
Hey.
I'm doing wonderful. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's really great to have you on, because it's such a hot topic at the moment. And as I've said to you before, it's something it's kind of been burning my ears. Everyone going, you've got to look into this stuff. You've got to look into DMT. You've got to look into DDT. You've got to look into even the 420. All these different things, which I've just been so focused on my mission that I feel these things passing me by. And it's really important, I think, to connect sometimes for me like this, so that I can really get into something, because I don't find that time sort of on my own. I'm always focused on, you know, the job I've got going on. So these chats are a really great opportunity for me to get some alpha for myself, and also provide some good content for people. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on.
Of course, man. Of course. And you're like hitting the nail on the head, I think, with saying that, like, I need to pay attention to this, I need to pay attention to that, because like we're so new and there's so many cool things happening all at once. I mean, let's not forget that Ordinals is 18 months old. Let's not forget that Bitmap is just turned 1 at the beginning of this month. And that digital matter theory is still under a year old. This is all so new, and we're here, and that's just so exciting.
Yeah, it's incredible how fast things move in this space. It's always, I think it's been a bit of a theme of this show, in fact, is that every week there's just too much to talk about. There's just too much going on. And then every now and then things go into hyper turbo. And, like at the start of Ordinals, I mean, we were already, I was working hard on stacks, the layer 2, been working on that for several years. And I was really, waiting for us to open the gateway to Bitcoin. And in fact, Ordinals came along, and in that metaverse way, kind of, it created a connection where there wasn't one before, but now, half the job that we were trying to do was kind of done. Of course, there's plenty more to do for the layer 2s, but it really was for us a moment of, we were just trying to keep up with what was going on stacks, with the Nakamoto upgrade, all these amazing upgrades, which are going to allow, 5-second trades, which you'll be able to, we'll be tokenizing ordinal data, but then trading it in 5 seconds, a completed trade. And, all of this sort of stuff is coming. But then Ordinals just sort of came out of the blue. And in fact, my first take on it was, I was horrified. I hadn't been watching what was going on with Casey. I know a lot of the guys on stacks were, but again, I was building. I was very focused on this music stuff I was doing. Ordinals appeared on my radar. I shot over there. I spent a day looking at it and went, this isn't the answer for music. I was just like, this is just really, really expensive. It's got a ceiling that is just going to keep going up. I could just see friction, and I could see pain ahead, and I couldn't see a clear answer other than this idea of just cutting up traditional recordings, stitching them together. And, that's what I was kind of saying to people. I can do this. A little bit. It's like take the recording, go back and take the old recording, and it's like, make it into something new, but we still need to go through the whole old process where we do this analog thing where we capture all of our magic and then we record it into this completely unsecured format, which is then copied and pasted and sent around to everybody with no actual idea of what is actually happening in those gaps between you and your material, And so this is a big moment, for people to kind of realize that there's more to this than just aping in and just getting your music on there, and knowing that at some point, if you're like putting big files on there, they're just going to get too expensive to do anything with. You're not going to be able to follow it up with anything if you're just doing that. And so we had to kind of find something else. And again, the other thing that occurred to me was that someone's now put a price on the block. So the first chat I was pulled into, I think it was the Counterfeit Culture guys, and Trevor was in there. And they're going, right, Jim, as the founder of This Is Number One, you must have a great take on Ordinals. And I was like, oh no, I had a little look at it, and I don't know much about it. Can you sort of explain it to me? And then they're like, yeah, well, this is this and that is that. And I'm like, so hang on. So for and I think at the time it was about $2,000 was the price for the whole block. So if I was going to do like a 4 megabyte file, it would be $1,000 or $2,000. This is right at the very sort of start of it all, and I was just horrified that this to me was like a massive attack vector. I was like, oh my god! So anyone in the world now can just for $2,000 can just shut us down, can just go, I'm going to publish I can do whatever I want. I'm just going to publish some binary data that means nothing, that's 4 megabytes, and then all you Bitcoiners, haha, you can't trade for 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever. And I was just, that was my first thought. And then of course, the first thing that got me into Bitcoin when I first read about it, sort of 2011, was the game theory element. And I think it took me a few days to kind of go over things again and again. And then I was also looking at what some of the people I was following, and I was obviously Muneeb, who is the creator of Stacks. I was closely sort of following what Muneeb was saying, because I could sense that he was also being cautious about it. But then I think, you know, between those two things, I kind of realized that this is like exactly what Bitcoin is built to do, is to face these tests. It's to face these things and then to reshape the mechanism that forms Bitcoin, the very clever, you know, incentives, matched incentives across different, you know, your hardware guys, your miners, and your and all these different aspects, and then the all of this is just built to withstand whatever humanity throw at us. Don't forget, it's literally our greed kind of inverted into an umbrella of trust, and the strength of that umbrella is based on our greed. Our greed makes that thing stronger. The greedier we are, the more valuable and protective Bitcoin becomes, and that in itself, you know, should sort of should throw most of your concerns should really be allayed if you really get that. Once that sort of sinks in, there's not a lot, you know, that Bitcoin has to worry about. And certainly with ordinals, that for me was just it was just a market dynamic. That's all it was a new market dynamic coming into it, and basically setting up what was going to be the next 20 years of concern, dwindling rewards, dwindling block rewards. For people who don't know, you know, every time a Bitcoin block is mined, there is a reward. It used to be 50 Bitcoins. Every 10 minutes, a computer would win 50 Bitcoins. That was for the first 4 years, and then each halving cycle that gets cut in half. We're now down to, are we 3.2? I don't even know what it is now. So we're down around that. So we're down around that zone, and so we're at that point now where the fees had to take over. Fees had to become something palpable, something that miners would keep mining for, knowing that they weren't just relying on the value of Bitcoin. And actually, Ordinals answers that question. So not only was it not something to fear, as I feared in the first place, but then I eventually came to the realization that it's the answer. So yeah. All right.
It increases the chaos of the system in a good way. In a good way, it increases the thermodynamic soundness of Bitcoin as you introduce this new method for generating fees for the miners to keep them going and to keep them interested. And it's interesting, you know, like my reaction to ordinals and its introduction, like I just jumped into crypto right when ordinals happened. Like it was like the month that it became a thing was the month that I officially started working in the ordinal space, in Bitcoin and crypto in general. And so I'm very new to the space. And the stuff that I've learned in this time is because of my obsession from the get with ordinals, because as an artist, I thrive on creative constraint. I love it. It's
Yes.
what keeps me from getting blocked. And that 380 kilobyte limit for standard ordinal inscription, that 4 megabyte limit for working with miners to get an ordinal inscribed, like those are real hard limits that I don't have time to fight because I'm too busy building and creating, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
I
totally
want
agree.
I want to just play with it. And so like, whereas you were kind of horrified, I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to play with this. I have to see, excuse me 1 second. began creating like within the month, or actually I was so overwhelmed by the possibilities that it took me about 2 months to get started creating. And then by April, I started having ideas that I was cooking with, and for years, a little bit of my background that might be helpful for your listeners is I'm a developer by trade. I've been doing it 24 years as a web developer, and I was lucky and fortunate 7 years ago to find a position in a musical instruments company. And ever since joining that company, I started playing and making and producing music, which is something I fiddled with as a teenager, but I didn't actually do anything for like literally half of my life. And then when I was about 32, I went through some stuff and I needed that coping mechanism, you know? And musically, ever since, I've made a song, I've made over, I can't believe this. I did the math because I knew I was going to talk to you today, and I was like, how much music have I made in the eight years that I've been producing? It's almost 2,000 minutes, which is, let me pull up my calculator, 31.88 hours of music, just music. And that's not including my visual art. See, I was really messed up. Like I had like, I guess what you would call a sort of nervous breakdown at 32. My career wasn't going well. My relationships weren't going well. And I just had to retreat. And I was very fortunate. I had someone sort of scoop me up and say, here's a place to live. Here's a place to put your head back together. Please do it. And it changed my life, dude. Like it gave me that space that I needed to learn how to cope with life, because life can get hard in your 30s. You know, and it's when I think all the lessons that we dodged in our 20s and all the mistakes that we made in our 20s start to catch up to us, right? And mine was no different. And now 8 years later, like I produce a song at least once a week. I don't paint as much as I used to, but I'm also a very avid visual artist. I've got over 300 physical paintings scattered around my studio and in the back half of my house and throughout my house. I love watercolor. I love acrylic. I like oil, but it makes me sick to use. And so now ordinals is a thing, right? And I'm taking all of those learnings, all of that creativity juice that I've learned how to manipulate and ingest and get going with, and apply it to ordinals. And now we have bitmap and we have DMT, and I've come up with an evolution of DMT. It's not really an evolution of DMT. It is DMT. I want to be clear that DDT, digital dimensions theory, is just a creativity framework, a sort of set of thought exercises and practical application examples for you to look at DMT with and say, oh, okay, I know how to get started creating now, or I have 17 ideas, now I just got to pick one. And I'll show you how to pick one without getting stuck. And that's what creative constraint does for me, the artist. And so ordinals did that for me. You know, it was like, okay, challenge accepted, create something in 3D. Because I was learning 3D when ordinals became a thing, and I've produced a couple of off-chain experiences that you can enjoy, like some music videos where we took a song that I either wrote or collaborated with someone else with, and we set it to like just this really calming scene of paper cranes. And then the song was called Paper Cranes, and so it's like a bunch of paper cranes landing on the water and then flying away at the end of the video. And that wouldn't have fit. That would actually probably fit on chain except for the music. And that's unfortunate. That is the one real big challenge that I scratch my head with, is how do we get music on chain? And I happen to be talking to the guy that's doing it, so that's pretty cool. You know, like when I started doing this, I didn't have any connections. I didn't know anybody in the space, and now I'm surrounded by like a dozen people in my daily life that are like, what are you working on today? What are you doing? You know, like, is there anything I can help with? and they want to talk to me about the things that I'm excited about. And I've never had that in my life. So that's just a long-winded way of saying that, like, I had a very different reaction to ordinals, and it's created a very different, but like-minded, as you and I have gotten to know each other, like, we're very much on similar wavelengths creatively. And it's so funny that we can come from those two opposite perspectives, though, and find ourselves in a place of commonality, and I like that.
Yeah,
I
really,
like
it
that a
really
lot.
feels now like, I'm really enjoying speaking to new people who are about the building and about experimenting, about evolving. We're not stuck in a rut of, collections and, all of this sort of stuff. It's much more than that. And I think that that's
Yeah.
what I'm really enjoying, is meeting people who are like that, who are like me like that. It's about what's next, what's over the hill, what's the thing that people think is impossible right now, that we know that we can solve.
Yeah, let's figure out what that is and do that. That's sort of where I'm at too, dude.
Yeah.
Like I regularly post always be building. That's like mantra number 1 for me. But number 2 for me is I experimentour. And the reason I keep that thought in my head is because as an artist, I need to remember that I'm not trying to hedge my bets on my next art collection or my next ordinals collection or my next application that I build. I'm experimenting all the time. I like the idea of passing that on and paying that forward because it was really powerful for me as a philosophy. It's like this is all just one big grand experiment, and it's working, which is really cool. The amount of attention that Ordinals has right now is, I think, nothing compared to what it could be in a year with the right people in the space building and showing the world what is achievable. And one of the important things that's happening right now is you've got people like us building tools, and then people who have real clout and real pull and real attention in the real world being like, what is that guy doing? Like, I'm thinking of like Iggy Azalea looking at and launching a meme coin. I'm thinking of Ghostface Killah and his campaign that he's doing right now. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, Jim, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. We're just getting into the interesting bit now, when we get past the hype and into where the real work starts to pay off and starts to come into it, which is why we've kind of been looking for ways to collaborate and work together on various things, because we can see that all of this, it's like the metaverse way. I think this is one of the things I had trouble when I first got involved in this. I wasn't a businessman. I hadn't started companies.
Same.
I was a musician, and then I was a tour manager. I was like a rock and roll tour manager. I was just I had a fun life. And then I got married and had children, and then started just getting really homesick. The fun life wasn't so fun anymore. It was kind of a bit of a drag.
Yeah.
And so I had to get out of it. I had to find a way out, and then crypto just kind of turned up. But then when I was first getting involved in various businesses, it just felt like a lot of the people that I was working with were looking at crypto in the same way that they looked at normal businesses.
Yeah.
And
I don't think
something-
that applies here.
It definitely doesn't apply here. It
I don't think it
100%
needs to apply.
No,
I don't think it needs
exactly. Those rules are out of the door, and what we need here is like the whole idea of transparency, decentralization, and fairness. Really, just puts the onus on you to do good, to offer the best service, to stop focusing on money. The money will come. The money is secondary. The community and the service and the listening and the dialogue that keeps your product useful is much more important now than the kind of dog eats dog world of before, because no one really needs to shop around anymore. All of the products are in exactly the same place, and so you're just going to use whatever is most convenient and suits you the best. That's all it'll be. There's not going to be a lot of room for people to kind of jostle for business. It's much more about kind of open sourcing everything, and then finding the opportunities in the in between bits. That's where the
I agree
opportunities.
wholeheartedly. Yeah, like, and what you said just now about the open sourcing of the work. Let's just call it that, like the work. You know, the time that we as developers, creators, and builders are putting in to generate a newer, better, shinier, happier place to exist consciously is a powerful, powerful thing. And I think that, you know, we are particularly fortunate, right? Because we're of the generation that gets to actually inscribe to Bitcoin in a, like, I'm middle class, you know, like I'm not rich. I make less than, you know, I should probably, but I have fun at my job, so I don't mind. But what that means is that, you know, if I were coming into this space 5 years from now, let's say, I might be precluded from playing on L1, right? I might have to stick to an L2 solution, because at that point, Bitcoin should have accrued uh, enough momentum that fees are quite exorbitant. Inscribing is more expensive and things like that. But, you know, that's where I think the L2 solutions that you talked about briefly earlier come in, like Stacks, and there's lots of people trying to get in on this space right now and establish themselves. I can think of like 3 other L2s trying to really dominate the zeitgeist or whatever within X, on X itself, you know, about being a Bitcoin L2 solution.
Sorry, on X.
Yeah, on Twitter. You know, like we have the one that I see the most is Merlin Layer. That's a layer 2 solution. There's Stacks, which I don't see enough in my timeline. So like I got to do something to change my algorithm, because I've seen a couple really cool things.
I think the good thing
on
about Stacks is that Stacks is, right from the beginning, I think the thing that really sort of captured me about Stacks was that it was doing things differently to everything else, because Munib did not, and this is in the middle of the hype, you know, 2016, I guess it was probably 15, 16 when he really came out with it. And the first thing he did was went to the SEC. He did not come out and say, he could have just made himself a billionaire and rugged instantly.
Yep.
Because the idea was so good. And at that time, Ethereum was just starting. And Ethereum at the time was getting slated for burning Bitcoin. Because that was how the Ethereum layer was, you know, you have to get that value in there somewhere for the miners, for that to like kickstart the whole economy. So they were burning Bitcoin, and they just, you know, Vitalik had just had that one further step of coming up with what Munib came up with, this proof of transfer protocol, the idea of taking the miners, or taking Bitcoin, now that you've got Bitcoin, and making that is your mining power, and then you mine with Bitcoin, and then you have the participants in the smart network, the smart layer, are now benefiting from that Bitcoin, and the miners are then earning the smart layer tokens. It just made sense to me. It just totally made sense to me. But Munib did it the right way. He could see what was going on at that point, and he said, I'm going to go to the SEC. I'm going to do it as a private thing. You know, I'm going to, and it took years. It took, I mean, the mainnet launched in 2021. And you think of how...
Oh, wow.
How
it started in 2016?
I think 16, 17, yeah. I think I found out about it in around 2019. I think I got my Stacks ID, I think was what it was called. Blockstack ID. It was called Blockstack back then initially, the company that Munib started. It was called Blockstack. So the mainnet went live in, I think, January 2021. So there'd been 3 or 4 years of solid working, building this thing without any hype, without any degenning, without any of this stuff, just with builders. You know, when we were building on there was no users, but there was a load of builders. You know, we were all building, but none of us were out there doing what was going on in other chains where there was just the next big hype thing, It was just doing things the right way. That's all I guess I can say about it. But it put us a long way behind, because that whole time that we were sitting on what we felt was the right solution, it was being done the right way via SEC, and it meant no one could invest, no one was going to talk about it.
So what was the importance, just for my own edification, because like I'm not familiar with the history of Stacks, and I've only got like 2 NFTs I think on Stacks. So what was the purpose of going to the SEC? To just preclude trouble basically, and just be like, look, this is what I'm doing?
To sell, to raise money through private investment, so that you never face the permanent cloud hanging over everybody still about being classed as security.
Okay, now I understand.
Stacks is literally the only one that's ever done it. It can never be classed as security. It was an SEC licensed sale. It's the only one, and I'm still baffled.
Today I learned.
It's pretty crazy. So it's that again, it's like, it's not a reason to use Stacks. I had a very interesting angle of all of this. Again, I wasn't technical. I invested. I remortgaged my house in 2014 and imported the UK's first two-way Bitcoin ATM, and that was my introduction. I'd read the white paper. I'd traveled a lot because of my job, because I was a tour manager. I was often away for months at a time, traveling several continents, sometimes several countries in a week. And I knew about Western Union. I knew about MoneyGram. I knew that I really didn't like them. And this appeared to me to be something important. And so I just kind of went a bit silly. I was looking for a way off the road at the time. I was looking for a way out. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy this Bitcoin ATM. And it cost about £20,000, I think. And we imported it to the UK, me and my business partner, Dashel, who I started this as number 1 with, which is the first Stacks marketplace. And then we just set about learning how to use this thing. I mean, I wasn't even that computer literate at the time. I was certainly not a coder. And so I had to learn all of this stuff. I had to learn about finance. I learned some really hard lessons actually about finance in those early days. I borrowed some Bitcoin from someone who I had convinced to buy some Bitcoin. I borrowed, I think, £1,000 worth of Bitcoin off them to fund the ATM. And this is in the very, very early days. And I think Bitcoin was maybe $100 or $200 each. So I maybe had borrowed 5 of them. I'd for £1,000, and I had that in my head. I kept the float at £1,000. I did not see the Bitcoin thing. I wasn't looking at it that way. I was looking at it as a tool. I didn't see that the price was going to change the way it did. So when I had to pay this guy back his 5 Bitcoins a year later, it cost me like 20 grand. I'm sorry, it was 5 grand that I borrowed from him, and it was 20 or 25 grand I had to pay him back a year later because the price had shot up. And so that was my first lesson, was don't ever go into debt in Bitcoin. And of course the flip side of that is own Bitcoin.
Can you say that one more time so that everybody hears it?
Don't ever go into debt in Bitcoin.
There we have it. Yeah. There we have it. That's a really important.
You never want to owe anyone Bitcoin, and that is almost the same as saying, you don't want to not own Bitcoin, because the flip side is own Bitcoin. You want to be on the other side of that, which is own Bitcoin. And I think that was when it made sense to me, and it was early enough for me to invest some more, and then I started trading, and I did quite well as a trader over a few years. Again, I sort of put my ADHD, my hyper focus, in charge, and it got a bit out of control, to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I was kind of trading 20 hours a day, because I felt like my edge was the fact that I knew where I knew the emotion of the price, the current price, better than anybody.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at it more than anybody, and I did really well, but it had an effect on my psychology. So at some point, it's like, okay, look, I've made some money now, so maybe I can start getting back into being creative again. And that was really when Stacks kind of happened. For me, it was around 2021. Awesome. And then we, pulled on some music contacts, got Fatboy Slim, we got Cara Delevingne, we got Orbital. Got Dave
I'm
Stewart
sorry,
from
what?
Eurythmics. Yeah, no, dude,
I'm sorry, who?
I got these massive global names because, you know, we're all there. Like I said, we're all builders. You're in the Stacks Discord. There's hundreds of us, but we're all builders, and we're all selling to each other. Everyone's just kind of like, I've got this product. Oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. Well, it wasn't really any NFTs, but it was a big melting pot. And then I suggested to the guys that I was working with, you know, NFTs is something that I've seen. I haven't taken notice of it because I'm finance kind of, you know, finance was now my thing. But if we want to capture attention, I was like, I say NFTs. Let's go down the NFT route. And so we were then the first, you know.
Yeah, it's like I had this guy that I used to work for. I'm sorry to interrupt, but like a way that I understand this, I think, if I'm getting what you're saying, is you have like this room full of builders, right? Or workers. In this case, it was a sales floor, and he was trying to get the sales numbers up. And he tried $20. He's like, whoever has the highest quota at the end of the day gets $20. Didn't really work. It bumped the numbers a little, but basically within 2 days, everybody went back to it being crap. But then he offered them a Snickers. Not plug-in Snickers, but, you know, like he offered them a candy bar. And the candy bar shot the numbers through the roof. And I think NFTs are the candy bar to Bitcoin's financial instrument, right?
To the DeFi and all the rest of it, all of that stuff that comes.
To cryptos.
And it felt like it was like the easy way to get some attention. And then, of course, you know, just doing things the way I do them, I was like, well, then we've got to aim for the top. I was at the time talking to this guy, Mike Cohen, who had introduced me to Stacks in probably 2018, 2019, who I'd met through the ATM. That was my thinking with the ATM was, if I buy the ATM, I'm going to meet all these super clever people. And this is what happened. This is what led me to where I got to today, was because I bought this ATM, and I did spend my everyday by this ATM mostly talking to, like, I didn't really meet many normal people. It went from Uber geeks. It went from Uber geeks in the beginning. Just, you know, it was never used as a proper utility. It was never like, oh, look, we're the bank, we're the bank of everybody. It never got to that point. It went from just chatting to like anoraks who'd come in and be like, oh yeah, you know, I just sit in a dark room all day, you know, writing. I've created my own cryptocurrency, all that sort of stuff. Then it went to like people just dealing drugs. And then it went to people paying fraud payments. So people, like, it would usually be foreign people who didn't speak very much English. We'd see them at the machine looking like upset. And it was all, and it ended up just being, like, it was like Dashel got really good at spotting it. He would just stop them instantly. Because he had a Belgian fries shop at the time. We'd moved the ATM a few times. Right now it's outside my garage door, collecting dust, ready for a museum. But at the time, you know, I was in his chip shop, and, you know, you'd see these people come in, and they would get these calls from, like, it's called HMRC. The tax man over here would call people who didn't speak very good English, perhaps didn't have the correct visa, and would say, if you don't want any trouble, you need to send some money right now, or we're going to come after you. And these guys,
that's dirty pool.
I was horrible, man. But like I said, Dash was like amazing. I mean, we ended up being kind of, you know, we really looked after people, because it wasn't for us about making money. Like I said, I actually lost money because I didn't understand it. But it was a learning process for us. But in the end, it became like we were like defenders of these poor people who were just being told, go to this ATM and put your money in, because the ATM was like that. It was a two-way ATM. You could go and you could just put cash in. I see what you're saying.
So that you could make
Bitcoin,
deposit.
But you could also turn up and you could say, I'm selling Bitcoin, and the ATM would give you cash.
You know, I've got a corner store just around from my house that I go to every day. You know, it's like my little shop, and they've got a Bitcoin ATM in the back, and it's the craziest thing, because like I as a user, you know, I don't buy my Bitcoin that way. Like I use Coinbase, like I imagine a lot of people do, and I experiment with loading up on Bitcoin in other ways too. Like I've used Unisat's recommended MoonPay before. But like just the convenience factor of being able, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna go to the store and get a drink. Oh, you know what? It's payday. I should drop 500 into my wallet. You know, that's a really empowering thing, and I think people just don't get it yet. But I think that there is a path to helping them get it. And I think that that's through what we make with it. Now that we have ordinals on Bitcoin, and it seems to be, well, it is the mother blockchain, right? Like first is first, I guess.
Yeah.
And that being said, like I kind of know your origin story. I'm curious, what was your first creative endeavor with whether it was Stacks or Bitcoin? Like, what was your first creative endeavor?
Yeah, the first creative endeavor was with Stacks. Was this we call it the Genesis collection. So it was just five NFTs with the artist Chemical X and Cara Delevingne, the model, supermodel, and Fatboy Slim, Orbital.
You just went for it right out the gate, didn't you?
Yeah,
just like
I was like Bob Geldof, telling each one of them that they'd regret it because the other one was doing it, who I hadn't actually convinced yet to do it. And then eventually, we sort of had everybody. But it was a joint effort between Dash and I had known Chemical X for a few years.
Yeah.
Having the ATM, we'd heard about him, and we did an exhibition for him in London where we took the ATM up, and we were, sort of doing some stuff together. And then he mentioned that that he knew Cara really well. So that was when we were like, okay, well look, if we can get Cara Delevingne. In fact, I think the first thought I had was Fatboy Slim, just because I was just really stunned that Mike, who had introduced me to Stacks, was from Brighton, and that he had built pretty much the first smart contract on Stacks. And I just thought, wow, this is world changing. And the last world changing thing that came out of Brighton, our town, was Norman Cook. So I'm like, let's get Fatboy. My friend is like his.
That's a brilliant angle. I really appreciate
guy.
The vision you had there.
Yeah, so it felt really great. But then, of course, we spent the whole time saying to all of them, each of the artists, you're not going to make a lot of money out of this.
Yeah.
Which at the time, they're just looking at all their friends who are out there. Oh, I just did this. I just made 10 million. I just did this, that, and the other. And we're like, yeah, that's not going to happen here. There's only about 500 people here, and they're all poor builders. But in some years' time, you will be credited for, the foresight. And they were great. They were all great about it. It's they still haven't seen that. I still feel like that moment is still to come for them, for people to say that was amazing, for people to even realize that the first audiovisual NFTs ever on Stacks were those 5. And then the first music collection was 1,000 Fatboy Slims, which we made and we gave away because, of course, we did these 5. And then I was like, holy shit, we've just done something really exclusive. I was just thinking promo. I was just thinking, let the world know that the answer is here. It's on Bitcoin. Cara Delevingne will do it. Orbital, Fatboy Slim, they're all... And we got we got global news, but of course it was just about 5 NFTs. And we did... The Cara one sold for 20-something thousand. It was like the first on-chain auction of a Stacks NFT. But then at that point, I was like, oh, this is really exclusive. This is not what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be opening it to everyone. So then went to Fatboy Slim and we're like, oh, are you cool if we do like 1,000, if you write us a special song, like a dedicated song? And then we got Chemical X to make a exclusive video using Stacks and his, because he does all the smiley artwork for Fatboy Slim.
Yeah.
So he came up with the art, Fatboy came up with the song, and we did 1,000 of them, and then we gave them away. But I couldn't even give them away because we had 1,000 of them, and there's only a few hundred builders in Stacks.
But you didn't have the audience yet.
And so we're promoting it, and then of course people would then turn up and be like, to send a Stacks transaction, you have to pay the fees. So of course they're like, I've got a Stacks wallet, but I can't mint your NFT because I don't have any money. And that was the funnest week. Honestly, I spent this week giving hundreds of people.
It was all tech support, wasn't
10p. Like maybe it wasn't even that.
Wow,
I was giving them like a cent because at the time the Stacks transaction was 0.03 of a cent. I mean, it was nothing. It was like 1,000th of a cent or something. It was unbelievably cheap. So just to give people 1 cent was saying, here's like 100 transactions. and people were so grateful. I'm like sending people like these unbelievable,
It's so insane.
and people were just so great but they got the Fatboy Slim, and those things are worth a few $100s now, you know. So it's like, and we gave them all away. That was lovely, and then we created more. We gave so much stuff away in those early days, and we created a lot of value. You know, we were trying to just get people in, and in fact, I think, you know, if when people come back again, we'll be able to go back to some of those things. We'll be able to do another a second Fatboy Slim collection. We'd never even got round to doing the Orbital collection. There are other things that we can go back to, but it just feels like, you know, we didn't want to keep pushing that until the audience is ready, until people are ready to come into to the space and go, holy shit, Fatboy Slim like has done nothing anywhere else except he did the first NFT on Stacks. You know, it's like, because that was the other thing. We were like, this is number one. We called ourselves This Is Number One because it was all about people who'd never done NFTs. We had a few other friends of Chemical X who really wanted to jump in, some big names, but they'd done stuff on Ethereum, and we were like, you know, we're really trying to send a message here, and the message is not a degen message. The message is, this is the way. So we just really wanted to find people who hadn't done it before. So that was the kind of the initial mission. But it's been an interesting journey. But that was again, that wasn't even my creativity. That was just me again trying to promote Bitcoin. Ultimately, I was still a Bitcoiner, and I was like, this is the next way to Bitcoin. We got to get all these other networks that are springing up. They're Magic Bean networks, is what I kept calling them. Someone creates a token, and then they're like, now if you participate in that chain, they will create another sub chain that's further away from the center, Magic Beans, and that's now your incentive to stay in here. And then when you get into that Magic Bean network, there's another Magic Bean network, and finally we had a network that said, you participate here, we pay you Bitcoin. That was all I needed to hear. That was like, holy shit. That is what was always missing, was that it was always the incentive was to take people further and further and further and further and further and further and further away. And finally we had this circular mechanism that just went, it just works like a figure eight. The smart network, the Bitcoin, the smart network, the Bitcoin. But if you participate in the smart network, you get paid the money that you want, not the fucking money that they tell you want, you know? So that was what did it for Stacks for me. But then the creativity didn't really start probably until I started doing some of my own music, and I put some music on there. But then Audionals came along, and it was like, okay, we have a new mission now, because this is kind of the way
it's a totally different space in a way. Casey, in a talk before I think it was right before or right after Ordinals came out, I was watching a talk that he was giving, and I didn't actually know this, and maybe this will be new to some of you or some of the listeners, but it came from a place of generative art. And generative art has always been truly fascinating to me because I have a background in software development as a web developer. And in the talk, he was like, you know, it was just, there was no money in it. There was no money for me in doing these generative art pieces, you know, like Ashi art that's animated, or I forget what the examples were exactly other than that. And he's like, I did it because, speaking on creating ordinals, he's like, I did it because I wanted, I'm losing it. I'm losing the quote. I'm so sorry. My brain is flying at like 1,000 miles an hour because you just told me stuff that I hadn't learned about you yet.
I really appreciate the segue. I have so many questions. You brought us back to generative art though, dude, which I was looking, I was suddenly thinking, shit, we've got to get back to the generative art. That's what the whole show's about. So I appreciate the segue anyway back into this.
Yeah, you like that? You like that?
I did like that. I mean, if you remember the quote, let me know. But otherwise, maybe we can look at some of these other projects sort of in the space, and you can maybe talk us through some of the things that you sent me earlier. Like,
absolutely.
I don't know which one would you like to sort of look at?
Let's start with my point of origin, the void mosaics. So that's architect.voidmosaics.
Yeah, I'm just bringing that in onto the screen now.
So this came about because I have a really amazing friend and advisor in Oceans from a company called B-Meta that I used to work at. And B-Meta does digital yachts for the metaverse. And we were working on a promo and needed a 3D bitmap, right? Because our first boats were released on BRC 420 on Bitcoin. And that process brought us around to bitmap, of course, because that's the metaverse on Bitcoin, or that's its intention, right? So I was sitting there, I was reverse engineering, I believe it was Bitfeed's 3D algorithm, because I didn't need the whole Bitfeed system. It's actually a little hairy to set up. So I just wanted the generative art for what represents a bitmap and turn it into 3D. That was my goal. And what happened is I was like losing again and again. I was experimenting and failing, experimenting and failing. And then I was like, it's a tree map. The name of the data visualization that represents a bitmap is essentially a type of tree map. And it's really appropriate that it is too, because, you know, like the Merkle root, which is sort of like the DNA of each block in the Bitcoin blockchain, is a tree. It's a tree data structure. And so I went and I grabbed a visualization library called D3, and I input all my parameters into that to generate a tree map of a Bitcoin block. And then I transposed that into 3D space, and what you have on your screen right now is essentially the result of my first experiment. It's not the same void mosaic, but it is the original incarnation of void mosaics. They no longer look like what you see on the screen right now.
So this is effectively a 3D bitmap?
It is a 3D bitmap, in
Yeah.
fact.
Okay.
It is the exact same methodology. The difference between this and a Bitfeed generated bitmap, which is the bitmap image that everybody knows and loves, is a Bitfeed bitmap is it's not full resolution. It's not it uses averaging, or not averaging, but it like buckets the various values that occur in all the transactions in a block. It drops them into buckets according to their size, right? And they're like, usually I think there's 8 buckets if I remember correctly. And so you're only seeing like a 8-point average of what a Bitcoin block is. This is full resolution, meaning every single transaction has a unique size. That's the difference.
So
and it's arranged in 3D space.
Is this an example of DDT then? Taking the same data?
This is.
Yeah.
It was before I ever had a term for it, but it borrows from the idea of the bitmap theory white paper that Blockimoto published, where he opens it, and honestly, I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit, and I hope Blockimoto never hears this, but like I never read the bitmap theory paper beyond the first sentence because it set my mind on fire so much. I got it.
That's the ADHD
as soon as I read
way.
the first sentence. Yeah, I was like, here's the quote. It takes advantage of data's inherent ability to be parsed from multiple different angels. I didn't misspeak there. That's how he wrote it. He wrote it so that, and I don't know if it was intentional or an accident, and he won't tell, but the last word in that is angels, not angles. And I don't know if it's intentional or it was a typo. I submitted a pull request to correct it, and then I told him to ignore it, because one of my favorite songs that I think I've ever written was inspired by that quote and that typo. So like,
nice, man. I mean,
yeah,
that's how these things start. It's how HODL came to be, wasn't it? Just a mistype.
Yeah.
A mistype that made sense.
And this was a happy accident too.
Yeah,
the void mosaics, I hit save, and I was like, at first I was like, crap, I failed again. This is like number 7. This is like the 7th time I've gotten it wrong. But then I just sort of took a step back. And are you a visual artist at all?
Yes, I am, but more of a digital, because I've been learning things like Blender and stuff like that. So I've been doing that. But
So
I can't draw.
As a traditional artist and a painter, it's important to zoom out and walk about the length of your room as far as away from your piece that you're working on as you can get, and then turn around and observe it from a distance to see if the composition is sound, to see if the color theory that you're applying works.
Okay.
And I did that with this piece. I was up at my family farm, alone in my little trailer that I have up there, and I just walked across the bedroom, and I turned around, looked at my laptop screen, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's art, dude. That looks like a brutalist sculpture of some kind. You know, it looks like architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And
but
it
tells an actual story. I was going to ask you if you could describe what's going on there to me.
in terms of
like what
why
are those
it looks
layers?
the way it does?
Yeah, yes. Like what does that tell you based on your experience of going through building this? Can you look at that and you can see like you can probably see a lot more than I can. When I look at that, I see the brutalist
You'd think that, wouldn't
architecture.
you? You'd think that.
So, am I barking up the wrong tree?
Well, I'm just going to be direct. I do not know.
Okay.
I do not know enough about the math inside of how you build a tree map. My ADHD didn't allow me to learn, bro.
This is the thing. As soon as you've made that beautiful thing, I can see you're like, well, that's done. That's finished. I don't need to go there anymore.
And so it was literally, I looked at it for about 4 hours. Do you know what I did? I inscribed it within 4 hours. I was like, this is something. I'm committing to this right now. Like my conviction was that strong.
People can mint these, or what's the?
So you see, there's a Void Mosaic mint pass.
Mm-hmm.
We have a holdup. You can't actually access transaction data on chain through recursion yet. So the mint pass was just an experiment to see if I could buy the time and interest to get the inscription fees that I needed to complete the project and get it all on chain. It's all on chain now, except the render script. I'm holding on to that until we get transaction endpoints so that I don't screw anything up, of course, and have to reinscribe something expensive. But all of the libraries that I need, like I put D3 on chain. D3 is a data visualization library. You can do amazing things with it, like this Void Mosaic as an example.
I need to
generated.
I need to get into that.
It was generated using D3, and when I published this mint script, you will be, or excuse me, the render script, you will be able to see how I did it, and it's. I'm not tooting my own horn because, like I said, it was an experiment and I stumbled onto it. In the words of Bob Ross, it was a happy accident. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to click Explore just with that current block height that's there. And I'll show you what the new one looks like. What I did is I went in and I tweaked the 3D aspect of the algorithm to make it look more like a bitmap. And so if you load into whatever the current block is, I'll explain what you're seeing there. And it's quite dramatically different. And that right there is the current block that was present, that had just confirmed when you loaded the page.
Oh, this is the last block that just happened.
Yeah, so if you go up in the top right, there's an I button.
Yeah.
That I button will give you that actual block's header info.
Okay. And
the block's header info is the ingredients for DMT, right? So this is an example of DMT that sort of didn't use DMT with any sort of intention. I used it by accident.
Yeah.
You know, like I was just, like I said, trying to do what a bitmap does.
Yeah.
What bitfeeds render does.
My kids play this game called No Man's Sky.
I love that game,
and
dude.
This is just making me think. It's like, imagine like using this style to generate ships. You know,
that is exactly what this is.
Okay,
so
amazing.
In my game, you'll notice that it says Archon Orin. That doesn't mean anything to anybody in Bitmap or Bitcoin. That's specific to my game. My game is called Seven Archons Eon's Ascent, and it is a twist of one of humanity's oldest simulation theories, actually.
Is this on the Assemblage Games?
Yes, astralassemblage.com.
Okay.
Yeah. So Seven Archons Eon's Ascent is based on ancient Gnosticism and the cosmology of ancient Gnosticism, the origin stories. And I just took it and I twisted it to the left a little bit. You know, I added some I renamed some characters, fleshed out the lore based on what's missing. Because when I was younger, I studied fervently Gnosticism, just from a point of interest. As a writer, I thought it was very cinematic sounding and needed someday to be a game. And here I am, half my life later, I'm finally doing it, dude. You know, like I'm making my inner child just freaking thrive. And so I invented this 84 card physical card game called Seven Archons. That's what you see on the screen right now. That's going into print by the end of this year with a first run of 1,000 decks. So there's some alpha for people listening. Seven Archons, the game and the Web3 flagship that we're working towards, Eon's Ascent, has a physical component to it, which is that Seven Archons physical deck and the Astral Codex, which you see there on the right. The Astral Codex is the living rule book for the game. So when you buy that physical deck of cards, you get 3 games that you can play with it. You could play 2-player, player versus player, 7 Archons. You can play Gnosis, which is a single-player solitaire sort of meditative sort of experience. And then there's another one, which is a 7-player game, up to 7 players, multiplayer, called Council of Chaos. And all the artwork is generative AI, and I've redone it 3 times. Hopefully, I'm ready to go to print before redoing it a 4th time. Because
keeps getting better.
Things are moving so fast.
Yeah, it's impossible.
And
it's impossible. Yeah.
We're also I'm backing away and probably renaming the company here in a couple weeks to just the Astral Assemblage LLC, because we're really a media publishing company. And I discovered that throughout the course of this last year. I've written almost a complete book of lore, like short stories. That's what you see on the screen now. It starts with the Salvific Scales saga, and that tells the tale that sets up what you see on screen now, which is 7 Archons Eon's Ascent. And this is all integrated with the blockchain, starting with Bitcoin. And the way that we're doing it is with the Void Mosaics. The Void Mosaics are the weapon in the war against what are known as the Void creatures in my multiverse. And my first on-chain strategy game is coming in the next 3 months. The Void Mosaics are coming and minting in the next 3 months. And there's a lot more to it than that. There's also the intergalactic map that represents this universe. I have this project called Nat Galaxies, which is currently minting, but I'm not promoting it because I'm still getting my ducks in a row there. So there's lots of moving pieces here. I'm a little bit of a fire hose of creation when it comes to the universe of my game. And unfortunately, I have taken offline the viewer for this project.
Yes, I was looking earlier just to see that. I was going to ask you about that.
I don't know if I can share my screen, but I can show people what the galaxies look like.
Yeah,
I'll set that up, and I'll let you know when I'm ready to switch. So what I'm getting at here is, let me tell you a little bit about my origin story. I know we just hit the hour mark almost, so
that's great.
I'll try to keep it brief.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'll keep it brief. So you remember I said I hit save and inscribed the Void Mosaics within 4 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Well, within a week, I was back home here in my studio, and we were talking about the BRC 420s that we were doing. And I had already done one BRC 420, and it didn't move at all. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try this because this looks better. This is original. I made this. Whereas the previous BRC 420, someone had gifted me a 3D object for my game. And let me just figure out. Can you read to me the block number of that Void Mosaic?
Yeah, 1 sec. It is 847666.
Ooh, 666. What? No, get out of here. Okay. So the intergalactic map for my game was arbitrary. It was created. The game was created in 6 weeks. In a code sprint here, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I work until 9, and then I go to work. Then when I get off work, I make music for like 2 hours, and then I get back to code until it's time to go to sleep. I'm hyper focused, and what I'm getting at is. So I'm gonna have to look at a different block because I've somehow broken my local branch. So I will have to unfortunately show you the galaxies later. But the Void Mosaics, I inscribed them. It was like 11 p.m. at night that I turned it into a BRC 420 token. I sleep for 4 hours a night. I try to sleep more, but I don't. Yeah, and so that night I was very tired, and I was just like, you know what? I'll buy the tokens for marketing in the morning when I get up. I got up 4 hours later. I had like $100 in my wallet when I went to bed. my wallet had $5,000 in it when I woke up, and I was like, what just happened? And I instantly went to the BRC 420 website, and every single Void Mosaic pass had sold out in 4 hours.
Wow.
And I don't have an explanation. I didn't market it, Jim. I just put it on there. People thought it looked cool.
It does, and it's also, when you look into it, it's cool. That's the thing, is it's under the surface. It's doing something neat. It's doing something unique. It's doing something that's interesting, that is proving further use cases. I don't know, it's doing a lot of things.
So do me a favor and change your URL by one number downwards. When I first completed these, DMT was a thing, but I wasn't using it yet actively. But now the version that you see on screen, it's DMT-ified. I applied digital matter theory principles to this, even though it's not a UNAT or a NAT token. This is just a recursive ordinal that I'm doing. And I want to make that clear to everybody that's listening. If you're here because you are interested in digital matter theory or digital dimensions theory or bitmap, you know, your project doesn't need to be a UNAT or a NAT token to use and take advantage of what digital matter theory does. Now, you'll notice this takes a while to load, and I'll explain that. A Bitcoin block header is a couple kilobytes, but the entire transaction layer and the block header can range anywhere from 10 megabytes or like 1 megabyte to 40 megabytes. So that's what's happening right now. Is I use a node as a service called getblock.io, and the network connection isn't the fastest in the world because I'm still a startup. You know, I've got costs that and I can't justify $600 a month or whatever they want to charge. So I'm using the free service to render these, and it takes a minute to load as a result. But once we're on chain with these render scripts, they'll be snappy because they'll be using a cached layer from inside ordinals. Wherever they're rendered, you know, they'll have that caching layer, I think. And that is why they take so long to build. And
I've got my node up and running. I mean, I know how much data there is there just to get a node up and running. You know, if you're trying to get the actual sats, it's days and days.
Yeah,
really
for me, it took. For me, I think it took 5 days total to sync up with the blockchain with my home internet connection that I use. Yeah, and it was crazy. And I really hope that the service isn't acting a fool right now, because I really want to show you how DMT is applied.
It probably is. So this is how the universe deals with us sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. And like, I've got another project that I'm launching that uses DMT and this API because it requires the transaction data. And it's very frustrating because, you know, like, we're so new that the tools aren't 100% yet, you know? So to carry on, the color of each void mosaic is a trait expressed via DMT. It runs the whole color spectrum from 0 to 360 using the hue, saturation, luminosity version of color that you get with CSS. So what we do is we set a fixed value for the saturation and the luminosity of the object, but we adjust the hue across the spectrum based on that trait. And so some are red, some are purple, some are blue, some are lime green. And one of the weirdest things, Jim, is the deeper you get down the digital matter theory rabbit hole, the crazier the synchronicities get. Guess what? Go ahead and just change that URL to 0. This one should load pretty fast. And I want to show you something really cool. 0 is 0.bitmap belongs to Blockimoto. He's the one to inscribe it, and that was his right as the creator of bitmap. And the creator of the void mosaics in my multiverse is an archon named Cygnus. Cygnus is his color is green, and what you have here on screen is the Genesis bitmap. You know, 0.bitmap. This is 0.mosaic, and guess
so this
who
is
created
effectively
the
just
mosaic?
50 bitcoins basically being given away with no transactions happening. Is that what this is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it sure is. And I don't know if it shows on your screen, but it says at the bottom the Archon's name is Cygnus.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a crazy synchronicity because in my stories, he's the creator of the Void Mosaics. And he happens to be the Archon, like just by the spirit of Bitcoin. Bitcoin selected him as the Archon that had dominion over this Genesis Void Mosaic, number 0. I didn't plan it that way, dude. Like, I alphabetized the list of Archons. I didn't say Cygnus gets to be the first one. It just happened that way. It just worked out that way.
Yeah.
And that's weird stuff like that happens the more I experiment
that is
with
the DMT thing, isn't it? That's the cool DMT thing.
Yeah.
And I guess it's like, I don't know, I guess in financial terms, I used to describe this to people, how I described Bitcoin, which was that if you were working in the financial world, you were operating in a stormy sea and you had no point of reference. You never knew whether you were on the highest wave or the highest wave was coming behind you, and you moved up and down with everything. And then Bitcoin comes along and it was like having an anchor where suddenly you stop moving entirely and you see everything moving around you. And DMT, there's some link in my head's telling me there's some kind of link between those two kind of concepts. You know, the idea of something that is completely out of our control but gives us a very, very powerful perspective because it's out of our control, because our perspective is what leads us astray. I guess.
Right. No, I totally get that, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think that for me, one of the other things, by the way, I want to point out is you'll notice that there are stripes across the Void Mosaic.
Yes, yeah.
Those are unique to each block, and they're painted on using DMT. What I do is I use the bits field, which is when you explode it into bytes, it's 4 values. And so that's why there's 4. Let me see. Let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So those are positioned from left to right using DMT.
So it's
and
always
so
4 and 4, although they might be laid
Yeah.
on top of each other, so you wouldn't necessarily see.
Yes. So sometimes it
Okay.
might look like there's 3, but
Yeah.
there's always 4
Okay,
on each axis.
Yeah.
And that was just another very simple experiment to say, hey, does DMT apply to this? And it does. And I argue that it adds a lot of character to the Void Mosaics as a texture. And it's generated live. So this isn't an image that I've created, saved, and inscribed or anything like that, or put on IPFS. Like, this is all generated at render time.
And this
the
is
only
using
images,
D3? Is this what was using D3?
This would be DMT3, yeah.
Yeah.
So we do not apply. So in digital dimensions theory, folks, what I did is I took and I married digital matter theory with theoretical physics's M theory, which states that there are 10 dimensions plus time. And the importance of that for me was it gave me creative constraints. It gave me a way to say that if I'm working in 3D, I can just jump to DMT3 and study DMT3. And DMT3 is just a simple way of stating that we're moving in 3 dimensions.
What is with all these points? Like
the stars?
Yeah.
They're just accents. Those aren't DMT powered.
They're not going to be in the same place
DMT
each
powered.
time. Like each time you come in, they would.
Yeah,
be
they're
different.
random right now.
Yeah.
But by the time I go live, I can use the transaction layer of this block to lay them out in space accordant to a deterministic pattern, which is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what my galaxies aim to do. I'm really trying here while we're talking to figure out where I screwed up with my code so that I can show you these galaxies.
It's so horrible. It's so horrible when you suddenly realize that. You're like, oh, let me show you this. Then you go, oh, that's right, I broke it. And I knew I had to
and I broke it with intent. I did break it intentionally, so this is just me paying for it now. Here it is. I found it. I found the piece of code that I need.
Something I was I'm going to show at some point shortly was something else I've been working on, which we're going to be bringing out over the next week or two, which is the first songs that are produced with the new sequencer, and they have an amazing generative visualizer which has, I haven't actually done the maths, but I'm assuming it's a calculator breaking number of unique music videos that effectively this visualizer will create. It's all just vanilla JavaScript. There's nothing, no tricks in there. But it's been interesting going through the process of seeing how the color arrays and things are sort of pieced together, and thinking, I wonder how that could be moved into this sort of realm where the number of seeds is still bordering on infinite, and yet you could use DMT or NAT type things to actually generate each time. So each time people are like minting, the music video isn't something that's chance, like the marketplace, designating a seed or anything like that. It's just pure chance, pure.
Yeah. So, are you able to see my screen? I actually found a way to show you the galaxies.
Let me come back to you there.
So this is 847666 that I've got on my screen. If you're able to show it, and what it is it is a completely DMT centric galaxy rendering that right now is just pretty art. But in 3 months, when I finish development, this will be an immersive experience. What you're seeing is the result of about 15 to 20% to goal. And I can't see if you can actually have this, if you actually have this on screen. Are you good to go?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to zoom out because I had zoomed right in on us.
Yeah, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit and take us into the heart of the galaxy. And I want to point out, if you look in the top right, it says populated star system 7. What that means is that out of all of these little specks of stardust that you see, there are 7 transactions in this block. And I'm kind of curious. I'm like, what's going on with block 847666? Why does it only have 7 transactions? I'm curious. I'm very curious. So we've got that one.
It's probably Ghostface Killer.
Yeah, probably somebody inscribing something huge.
Yeah.
So let's go to 665. And when I said I broke the galaxies, here's what I meant. Like, the galaxies are not meant to respond like this. NAT galaxies represent a DMT pattern known as A0. So if you don't know, the way DMT is intended to work, according to the Git book published by the block runners and mscribe, I'm not sure who to attribute it to there because they're the same people, but like I don't know if it's a product of mscribe or a product of the block runner. Not important. They wrote it, right? And or they published it. And what we have here is another galaxy that has 2,915 populated star system. That is a direct correlation to the number of transactions in the Bitcoin block. So as we zoom in, you'll start to see this really pretty spiral pattern that I've programmed based on, and these stars are positioned randomly right now because I'm only at 15%. The idea is that I use the coordinates for each transaction using its hash. I can position it deterministically in space so that at the same time, every time you load this, these stars are in the same position. And I may be incorrect. I think only the space dust actually is random. I do think that these render in the same place every time. The bright colored stars. And these will act as the firmament, the intergalactic map in Astral Assemblage's 7 Archons games. The Void Veil games is the Void Veil Trials is the first on-chain strategy game I'm building and releasing here in a couple months. And you can see I did the same logic. I used in the top right, this block only has 2 populated systems. So there's been some weird stuff going on with Bitcoin today, huh? Like, I'm tempted to jump over to Mempool and look at
see what's going on.
See what's going on, because there's 1 star system. It's a tiny little speck over here towards the right. You can see it swirling. It's a different color. It's like a cyan color. and it's very tiny. And
We
so,
can't mint.
yeah, these galaxies. What'd you say?
But I can't mint it.
You can't mint this because it's not a valid NAT galaxy.
Okay.
I didn't want to spoil anything on the stream, so what I did is I broke my code so that it will render any Bitcoin block.
Can you look at
galaxy.
my two EMERT primes so I can see them?
Yeah, can you remind me?
Yeah,
the block number?
747-547. It's one of them.
So Jim found some real gems in this, and everybody when I put this viewer back online, I can't wait for people to start sending me pictures because I will never see all this art. To give you guys an idea, the Nat Galaxies collection is 125,000 supply. And this one that Jim found just is the most complex, cool spiral I think I've seen yet, because when you're zoomed out, you can see a spiral, and then that's not even the main spiral though. Look what happens when you zoom in. There's another spiral within it, which is the populated star systems. And then Jim, what was the other one?
The other one is...
Because it was equally beautiful.
747-611.
661?
611.
Or 611.
611.
I think this is the one that blew my mind the most. No, it was, I can't remember. Yeah, it was this one. I've actually been using this in my marketing, by the way.
Nice.
I used it last week. So the purpose of these galaxies is to act as the locations that you do battle in my game, Seven Archons, Eon's Ascent. But they're more than that. They're the building blocks of a metaverse, a true metaverse, like down to the planetary level. You know, like I'm not playing around here. Like I needed an entire universe for my game. And I didn't want it to just be anything. Once digital matter theory came out, I was like, this solves my problem of me just deciding how many things there are. And the bulge, by the way, you see the geometric shape in the galaxies. That's kind of a placeholder for the actual visual effects that I haven't written yet. So I'm thinking of keeping it though, because the feedback on the squashed sphere there, the wireframe, has been very positive. And so like I'm like, okay, now how do I explain this in the lore?
They're
like,
different
what is
shapes
this
as well,
huge?
right?
No, they're all the same.
They're all
well,
the same
yes,
shape.
they're all spheres.
Yes, but I thought
that are
squashed. Some of them were squashed more.
But some are taller.
Yes.
Some of yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
So like for example, let's go to your neighbor 610, and let's look at 610. You know, like when we rotate it, it's much flatter than yours, right? Like yours had a little bit more of a bulge.
I think there's some delay on your feed because I keep not seeing the. I'm still looking at the zoomed out version at the moment on Discord.
Yeah, it's stalled out at the moment for sure.
There we
so
go.
now we're back to 611.
Right above it, looking down. Yeah, that was cool.
And when I turn this to the side, it's a little fatter than the other one. And this is all determined by a DMT trait. Now, I'm not going to show you what my traits are because, like I said, we're actively minting. I do want to tell everyone, I'm not trying to sell on your show, but like I do want to tell everyone, it is sort of a special event going on right now. If you manage to mint one of the first 777, I've got a surprise coming for those holders here in the next week or two. I'm just working out some details and making moves in the back channels, trying to get my ducks in a row to make this happen. But what I want to show you, and if I can show you one more thing, I'm going to show you Seven Archons, the game, because I want to show you what we're building toward for the Mint platform, the Mint experience for Nat Galaxies. We're not going to... I've asked the community, and even though I have a very small community, the response was, hands down, we want a Cosmic Mint experience. So I've already written the code for this. We just have to adapt it to take advantage of the blockchain. And that process, I'm very excited to say I've got 2 developers starting in the next week. So it's no longer just the Astral Arkitekt cooking. Like the Astral assemblage is becoming real. And this is kind of alpha. Nobody knows this yet, but I have a team now. You do, because you know we've talked a little bit about it, but like I've got a guy that's helping me build DMT research tools. His name is Hash. I've got 2 developers starting that are helping me build out this Cosmic Mint experience. And one of the engineers I know is that's coming on board is one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with. And he believes in my project enough to be jumping in and helping me realize this dream of this Cosmic Mint experience. So what is that? It is the intergalactic map to which I've been referring. So this is the alpha interface for
I'm still seeing the galaxy.
7. It'll catch up in a moment. So what I'm getting at is the block runners, when they talk about their new Mint platform, the block pad, inspired this idea, and then Mattyverse, who is an influencer on YouTube and X, posted this really thought-provoking question or idea about a month ago now. And I immediately aped in and was like, dude, can we talk? Because I would love to put this into action. He's like, yeah, I'm not a builder, go ahead. And so I was like, I'm going to gamify my Mint for the Nat Galaxies, and here's how I'm going to do it. This is the intergalactic map for 7 Archons Eon's Ascent, the alpha game. And it needs a lot of work. It's not pretty to look at, but it's functional. So these are arbitrary galaxies, not the Nat Galaxies. I can click on a galaxy, it'll zoom in. As you can see, I still got some 3D work I got to sort out. But then I can click Explore, and it'll show me the 66.
We're still not zoomed in yet. We're still looking at the Galaxy Explorer.
Okay.
Now it's zooming in. Star System Explorer, it says now.
Okay, so this is how these would be those populated star systems within the Nat Galaxies.
They've got a little thing
and so I'm
buzzing around the outside. What's that going around? They've all got like a kind of disc.
Yeah, it was just an accent piece. A friend made that for me. I showed him what I wanted, and I'm no 3D modeler. I've taken classes, but I'm not great at it.
Yeah.
And so he donated this little sculpture that you see floating around the sphere. Cool. And I just liked it. I thought it looked sci-fi and cool.
Yeah.
But it's imperfect. And so I'm looking for a 3D modeler to come and redo that. So anybody that's listening, you are more than welcome to jump into my DMs if you've got 3D skills and want to take a stab at creating something that looks cooler than that. Holler at me. I'm looking for somebody to help me make that look better.
One of my oldest mates is into 3D. I'll point him your way.
Yeah, maybe you hook us up and something cool happens. Who knows? So what this is doing is it's showing you in the inner sphere the number of planets and the number of stars in the star core. So there's 1 planet in this star system, and there's 2 stars, right? So now let's go to a different one. I'm going to click on Eon's Beacon and wait for it to catch up.
Yeah, it's still looking at the single.
And this is a rogue star system, as you'll see in a second. A rogue star system is a collection of celestial bodies that has no star core. And so that's why you don't see any stars in the core of this one. This is actually a pretty rare occurrence. And this is not the set of galaxies that will exist in the final implementation. But this is a possibility in terms of what can happen. And so that's why you don't see any stars there.
Still hasn't caught up yet. Or is that, am I looking in the background behind the planets? You mean no stars?
Well, I'm talking about in the center of the sphere. There's
in
no
the center
stars,
of the
right?
sphere. Okay, sorry, I'm getting.
Whereas
my perspective is all out of. So each of those is a galaxy.
No, each of those is a planet in a star system inside of. Where's the name of the galaxy? And we're in the galaxy called Apocryphal Supernova right now, and we're looking at the star system called Eon's Beacon. So this is the star system called Eon's Beacon. It is a rogue star system with 3 planets. Okay. That's what the information down in the bottom right says. And then I'm going to switch to another one just to show you a final example. And so let's say after looking at this star system, seeing the various, looking at this galaxy and seeing the various star systems it has, I'm excited about it and I want it. So I add it to my shopping cart. And then I go about my business finding other galaxies that I want, and I add them to my shopping cart. Well, when you're ready to go, what would it look like, Jim, if instead of just getting the transaction window, you get a challenge instead? You get 1 minute or 2 minutes of previewing the gameplay that this powers, just to introduce you to the idea. Or if you don't want to play it, you can just pay full price. But if you do play the game, you might get 30% off or 10% off or something. Who knows? Who knows what could happen? And so if you manage to stay alive for that trial, that 1 to 2 minutes, I'll give you 10% off the mint price. That's my thinking, my value that I'm bringing to the platform as a Cosmic Mint experience. You would use this to select and find the galaxies that are the most beautiful to you. We would replace the star system viewer, which is what happens when I click explore. This view that's about to pop up on the screen in a moment. We would replace this with the galaxy render that I was just showing you in my other browser tab.
Okay, yeah.
And that's fully explorable using the menu on the left side of the screen there as to navigate. And so I've got a front-end developer and a back-end engineer that are joining me to help realize this Mint platform. I think it'll take us about a month to get it out the door. And then the grand cosmic spin is in full effect. I can't tell you what that is yet, but let me just tell you all, it's a big deal for not just my project and my game, because if I success, I am able to do more. I'm able to put more on chain. I'm able to do more research because I no longer owe my time to a fiat job, like if this is a successful project. And I'm hopeful. I'm ambitious as can be on this. I really am. And
it's amazing how much has gone into it, man. I mean, I think I had this conversation with you when we first met, that I sometimes find myself baffled by where all the money goes in this space when there are people working so focused on like a clearly long-term project, and yet people just go and throw their stuff at whatever's just popped up overnight. And there's things like this about, and if people want to know where they should be investing, like the smart money is going to go on people who have a track record and a clear dedication to what they're doing. They're not doing it for it just seems so obvious to me that people just can't see that. People cannot see commitment over hype and dedication and all the rest of it. It's
you just got to be louder. I think that's what I'm learning in the space is, maybe I just have to be louder. Maybe I have to be more persistent and I'm not a person with a big ego at all. As a matter of fact, I try to always approach things from a perspective of knowing that I'm not the smartest person in any given room, and I try to build things knowing that there are people that are going to have better ideas. And as a matter of fact, that plays into what's about to happen in this next 2 weeks with the Nat Galaxies project.
This is exactly what I, was getting to with the whole open source thing. This is, I'm almost jealous of my kids being part of this generation that get to experience this level of cooperation.
It's a beautiful, crazy.
This digital evolution is going to happen, and everybody can participate, and it will accelerate because of this. All these previous blocks. This is what we were getting to very early in the conversation. I was talking about that business element of coming into this thing. People were telling me that I had to sit on my ideas over and over again. I'd give someone an idea, and then they would tell me, don't go and tell anybody else that idea. And it was really driving me mad. And it took me a while to kind of realize that that's the old world that we're escaping here. Our escape velocity is to get away from that shit. Is to get away from.
I'm still terrified, to be honest.
And IP. It's scary because as we said before, I don't really have a business model, but I feel like once the utility is there, once we get to where we don't even know we're going, but this is being a pioneer, forging ahead. This is how amazing things happen. But You know, I think that when the market picks up, everything's going to kind of people will hopefully come into focus. Maybe it's going to be after the bull market that people will come into focus, but I think this bull market is going to be the tide turner for Bitcoin in terms of utility, smart contracts, all of that business.
I fully support what you're saying there, and if I can just talk just a little bit more about the galaxies, what I'd like to say in closing about them is this. This is not for my game alone, and I want to make that very clear. I'm engineering these to give these to the entire crypto community on Bitcoin, building for Bitmap, something that they can literally just, if you own the token, the render script that you open from your wallet, like let's say it's 3 months from now, the art has been revealed, the galaxies are complete, you open your wallet, you tap on your galaxy. If you are the owner experiencing that galaxy, meaning it detects, there's a way to detect certain wallet types. I think all of them will work with ordinals, but I've done an experiment and inscribed on chain a proof of concept that I can read the inscriptions in a Unisat wallet, for example, from inside the inscription. So if I can do that, I can say, oh, this person actually owns this galaxy. Well, we're going to give them a little bonus in terms of what they're experiencing. Yeah, it's kind of alpha, right? Like,
yes.
Okay, so I'll show you the inscription. It'll take just a second. Let me pull my thing off screen, and then I'll be back in a second with an example.
That sounds huge, dude. If you're doing that.
I work amazing. With the Bitmap standards developers, like Blockamoto. I work directly with him and a handful of other developers on realizing the finalized Bitmap standard. I'm not a big contributor, but I show up, I put my time in, and it's proven very fruitful for me as a builder because I get to hear them pose questions like this one that's about to show up on my screen. Can you access wallets from inside an inscription? I thought as an engineer, no way. The sandbox prevents it. I don't know if you know this, but Ordinals lives in a sandbox. So when you go to ordinals.com and you view an inscription like this one, if I open a new tab, let me copy this to my clipboard, and I open a new tab and then I change this URL to inscription to look at the way it's rendered, it renders in an iframe, and that iframe is sandboxed, meaning it cannot access anything that is not on chain. But you know what it can do? Is it can interact with anything that attaches to the window object. And so what that means, Unisat, Xverse, OKX, all the wallets attach to the window objects to allow web pages to interact with them. And this is an example. Watch what happens. I click Unisat, excuse me, not on this tab. So in a second, tell me when you can see the big black screen that fills the whole window basically. Okay, so look at that. That's my wallet and all of its inscriptions. So what do I do with that, right? Well, you see it gives preview and content URLs. So let's say if you can do that, then you... And it took me like 90 minutes to do this little experiment, and the unlock is just crazy. Like what it unlocks for us as builders. No, this is just a proof of concept. So all you have to do, anybody that wants to can visit, you're welcome to repost this inscription. It's not like it's private, right? It's on Bitcoin. So, and you can view source and see what I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I just set your brain on fire. Congratulations. Like, you do it to me all the time in the little bit we've talked, so Right, but I was wrong too. I was wrong, and that's what I mean by I only read that first sentence of bitmap theory, and all of a sudden I understood DMT, I understood bitmap, I understood this. There is a space that you can take a breath in and step back as a creator and say, turn your head 90 degrees clockwise to look at it sideways, or turn your head upside down, as I say in my first lesson on digital matter theory and in digital dimensions theory. And when you do that and you look at it from a different angle or someone else's perspective, in this case, I was listening to Bitmap News and they were talking about using wallets inside inscriptions. And I was like, no way, they're wrong. That's not possible. I'm an engineer. I've been doing this a long time. I was wrong. And I've never been more happy to be wrong, because what it unlocks is I can reveal a special button in my inscription that says, okay, this inscription ID matches an inscription in this person's wallet, right? So if that's true, then I can reveal a new inscription script that they can inscribe on.
Couldn't we do a mess? This feels like the possible messaging system.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about that more.
Like if two people they'd both have to have this ordinal or an ordinal open, but it feels to me like, because I could just do a post, I could use this to trigger a post message that will only be picked up.
Yeah, so it
by
depends on
wallet.
browser extensions.
If someone else is logged into the same thing, they've got they've got something in their wallet which says, yes, I am going to decode this. It's not like it's private, a message. Yeah. It's a post message or whatever, but it's just a cool thing. Just a cool thing that I think I could...
It's possible,
like
yeah.
A switch.
I think it is.
Like I could have a switch that I could do something with, as long as my friend is looking at the same thing. I can do a switch, and with using the same technology at that end, I can also make sure that he will see it, no one else will.
Right. And because he has to have the key, the decoder. So what does this allow us to do? This allows us to use desktop browsers that support browser extensions to add functionality that was never intended but is available to ordinals despite the sandboxing, right?
But these guys might change the way they do this, though.
They can't. They can't.
Really?
I don't believe they can. Well, I mean, let's think about that. Before I say can't, I suppose it is possible to sanitize the window object.
I just wonder whether this will be open forever. I mean, because obviously at some point it might be as simple as, okay, there is no Unisat X Versa OKX anymore, and so whatever API this is picking up from, it's no longer there. It's because no one's using it. But then there's the other side of it, is like, do people change the way they do that? And so even while those wallets are still in there, is that going to be a long-term solution, or is it like a temporary thing because they're not doing things the best way they should?
Right. So let me explain to you my thinking and how this applies to bitmap, because I think that this is really a big value unlock and use case, and why it's part of my why for why I'm building this. So like, let's say that I finished this galaxy here. I only pulled this up because it looks really cool. It'll load in a second, I'm sure.
Yep, I see that now.
Now let's say that this is the inscription. Yeah, I definitely showed you this one before. This one right here could be in my wallet, right? And I own it. And down, as a result of the inscription knowing that I own this, it could reveal a button that says parcelize. And so you click that and it explains parcelization is if you own a bitmap, and maybe I'll have to add a little module that explains what a bitmap is for adoption's sake. But what this is this concept that I'm explaining allows you to create content like this, which will be explorable when I finish it. So these aren't just collectible art pieces. They're not just art for my game. They're explorable. Like, I have spaceships being designed as we speak by a good friend in France, doing it out of the kindness of their heart and their desire to experiment and learn. And I just wanted to say that because I think it's so awesome. So these are going to be explorable. So one of the things that's missing from this interface is the explore button. where it shifts perspective down to the starship level, and the galaxy is as big as a galaxy is, you know, and you can fly and navigate from star system to star system, which is the equivalent in if you were to compare a galaxy to a bitmap, a galaxy would be a bitmap. You know, I'm not trying to compete with bitmap though. I'm trying to add value to bitmap, and here's how I'm doing it. And I encourage others to have a deep think about this because you can do it too. And it's this. There is going to be a button that says if you're the owner of this inscription, you can parcelize this, and it will reveal a mint script that you can inscribe on your parcel of your bitmap of your choice. And then whenever somebody visits that inscription for that parcel, they get to experience the galaxy just like you would as the owner. So you get to share your experience. And I've gamified that a little bit, and I'm not going to go into details because it's, you know, still under development. But what I can tell you is this: it enables holders of bitmap that are not builders to add metaverse content within the end of the year if I execute this correctly. Like, this is a V1 feature that we're talking about. Now, there are some other things that I'm not ready to talk about yet with it, but just think about that for a second. It means that I've got this one friend that has a wallet full of bitmaps that you have to scroll to get through. He has so many. And he's not a builder. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing with all those? Like, I understand. And he's like, well, the number, I believe, in the metaverse on Bitcoin. So, like, you know, I'm holding because I believe number eventually go up. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what about content? And he's like, I don't really concern myself with that. I'm supportive of the space though. And I was like, well, what if I could give you a way to put content on any parcel you want? I mean, mind you, it's going to be cosmic. It's going to be a galaxy, but like, it's something, and it's gamified. So you can host tournaments in these galaxies using my IP. The Void Veil trials will be integrated into these galaxies.
So
since
in
it's
theory,
on chain.
could you own a galaxy and be completely hands off, but for some reason or another have a load of stuff going on in there with other people?
That's exactly my point. Yes, you absolutely can, and that is my intention in direction that I am headed right now. And so this idea, this concept, is that you take the inscription and you can allow them, let's say they are a builder, that inscription that they can put on their parcel. Let's say you're a builder and you want to build your own galactic game or your own galactic experience, but you don't want any of my IP in it. Fine, I don't care, turn it off. So I'm engineering a switch so that you can reinscribe at any time to turn on or turn off Astral Assemblage games content inside these galaxies. Because I believe in bitmap, I believe in the metaverse on Bitcoin, and leaving a legacy like this behind is too big an opportunity for me to pass up. You know, like one of the reasons I'm working so hard to create and build is family reasons. You know, like I'm trying to take care of family, and I don't have a family of my own. You know, I just have my family from my parents, and I won't have kids. You know, like it's just me and who I am. I won't. And so this is what I get to do with my life as a result. Is I get and my little puppy. His name is Wookie, everybody, and he is a handful and a half. But by the end of this year, Jim, I do have to go here in about 7 minutes, and I hope that's okay. I do want to wrap up by saying this. I'm one builder, okay? Just one guy. I have a full-time job. Now, mind you, it doesn't engage me much, so I get a lot of free time, which is awesome. I'm super, super, super blessed. And I know that not everybody is that blessed, but if you just carve out a small window of your time as a builder, a creator, an artist, and you commit to showing up every day if you can in that one window of time, you can repeat what I'm doing. And I'm teaching people to do it through DDT. And that's the whole point of DDT, is to enable people to always be creating without blockage. And to sum this all up, by the end of this year, I will introduce 2.4 plus million touch points. 2.4 million, dude. I don't really have a concept of what that number even is in reality. You know, like I've never experienced 2.4 million of anything that I can think of off the top of my head. But I will have generated between the void mosaics, between the Nat galaxies, between a couple other projects that I'm not ready to talk about yet. They're all slated to realize themselves by the end of this year. The Void Veil trials, by the way, spans the whole blockchain, meaning every individual block in the blockchain is an individual mission in the Void Veil trials game. So that's another 847,000 something, 667 experiences that real normal people that don't give a shit about crypto can come and have an experience and say, wow, that was fun. Hopefully, that's my goal.
It's a bit infinite monkey cage, isn't it? Because it's like in like 1,000 years, some of these things that have become truly evolving generative things are going to continually be going to places where people don't know where they're going. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway, dude, yeah, we've got to wrap it up. It's been 2 hours. It's probably my longest show, but it's amazing talking to you.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good, man. It's been. I said. Just go on. It's been amazing. I would have stopped you if I needed to. It's all good. It was.
Let's get to your beautiful galaxy back on the screen as you're doing the outro.
I was something I meant to play in the beginning, and I was going to give people a little taste of is the music that is coming up, which again has this generative aspect to it, by an artist called Squeezy, building this kind of generative visualizer that has, from what I can tell, I don't think there's a number that you could put in and you'll just never get the same music video twice, because it's just.
I have to see this, dude. Like, I can't wait.
So I'm just going to play this now for everyone, but I'm just going to say sign off, and then I'll play this as the outro.
Yeah, let me shut off.
Thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been amazing meeting you anyway. But also getting you on the show to share stuff, and also for me to learn, because this has definitely been my most learning experience about DMT. Just even going through, just doing a bit of research this morning, just because I knew I was going to be talking to you, was super helpful for me, just to kind of get my head around, what this is, and it's important because, again, people like us, once we do engage with something, we'll take it to that nth degree, where magic happens, So, but anyway, that's kind of
what are the geniuses gonna build? Like that's where my head is at. Like, as we wrap up this conversation, like what is this next year of ordinals gonna bring as people realize the possibilities that are in DMT, and hopefully I finish DDT and it takes off too. And it's like, what is that going to challenge people's brains to come up with? That's my goal. And I am always happy to brainstorm. I've got a growing community of people that I brainstorm with every day. You're becoming one of them, and I'm super stoked. I'm so thrilled that you had me on, because I don't get to do this ever. I don't get to really talk shop. And it's been great. Let's hear this music, see this video.
Yeah, man. Let's go for it. Nice speaking to you, and I will speak to you again soon. Cheers.
Of course. Cheers.
Sort the size of that out. I don't know why that is so big. You'd have thought I'd have rehearsed this. Okay, here we go. Let's try that then. Still not fitting. Okay, there we go. Here we go. So I'm just going to pause it there because something has gone awry with my computer again. Then let me just start it again because it's gone out of sync. Let me try that again.
Truth.
So yeah, that was the that's an example of one of the generative visualizers for this one song, and I'll show you before I go. I'll play one more version, but like I said, there's basically infinite variations. Each channel of each song, each instrument is assigned a random access level to a varying number of color arrays, which each have hundreds of different color settings in them. So it really is, I haven't done the maths, but it really is going to enormous numbers. Yeah, I'll play you this last one and then call it a day. But thanks again for listening in. Thanks to Astral Arkitekt. Learned a lot today about some generative stuff after we both discussed our life stories for a while, but very interesting chat today, and it was really nice having a guest on. So yeah, thanks again to Astral Arkitekt, and thank you for joining. See you at the next one. Cheers. Oh yeah, it's super cool. I'll play one more before I go. But yeah, I think what I was getting to, I meant to play that earlier on, and just to say that we've got quite a lot of different musicians now, kind of starting to use the technology that we've been building to start to put together some songs. So I'm hoping that we're going to start to see more and more music coming, but this is a nice intro. It was interesting, creating a piece of music that really tried to strike all the different possible visual elements and to kind of grow a story through the song by triggering, bringing in new instruments as the song sort of progresses, as well as different beats to try and trigger a different show. It's an audio visual feast. Really, but yeah, so keep an eye out for that. There's going to be some stuff coming up on Gamma pretty soon, some music which is going to be really great, some music with some really awesome generative elements to them. So yeah, let me just find one more if I can. Let's see if there's another one. Let's try that one. Okay, this will probably be the last one. I think. Okay, let's try this then.